Monday means Bixby football, brought to you by the folks over at Red River Payroll. I'm Rick Corey here. You'll see Otto. That's my dive company's logo. And of course, the Tulsa logo after a nice win in Army. But that logo right there is the one we're going to talk about. That's Bixby football. Loren Montgomery and a nice win over the Union Red Hawks. Very, very focused. Great first quarter. Did your team have the look in their eye that you wanted, coach, going in?
Yeah, our guys came out and played well. We were riddled with a few penalties and were able to overcome those. But we'd certainly like to fix that. But I tell you, our guys played fast and played hard, and we're excited about that. So we watched film Saturday and work on making a few of those corrections and getting to practice on Thanksgiving week.
There you go. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. When you're playing a team, you hadn't played Union, of course, and now you're going to play Broken Arrow. We'll get into that a little bit later that you haven't played. I don't know. To me, sometimes playing somebody you haven't played in the playoffs as a player would be actually helpful. As a coach, I'm not quite sure. Does it matter to you?
Oh, we were familiar with some of the things that Union does simply because they brought some familiar faces over from Owasso last year, and we played Owasso twice in 2024 and twice in 2023. So we were familiar with some of the things, but some of the things we weren't. Nathan Foster, their defense coordinator, he's been at Union a long time, and so we haven't seen that since 2020. But no, it's always fun getting to play someone you haven't played in several years, and our kids were excited.
I looked at great performances from Jason Mall, obviously, Carson Kirby again. But this look across the board, you look, I mean, outside Jason's having a more than 100 yards, this is another very team win. This is what your team does. It seemed to me that you were about as efficient. And I was watching some of this while I was up in West Point, trying to watch as best I could at dinner. And it seemed like your offense, especially, was just like this. You seemed pretty crisp. You mentioned penalties outside that. Anything else you were happy or unhappy with?
Well, no, I thought we did a good job running the ball. When you get into the playoffs, you always have to run the football, and so we did a good job there, as well as protecting the quarterback. So Carson was able to throw the ball down the field. Nate Gonzalez had a really big night
Yeah.
at slot wide receiver and at corner. Union has some talented guys that you have to cover, and he had a really big night. And so a lot of guys contributed. A lot of guys made really big plays, and we think that's great that maybe we're just not a one-trick pony.
Right. And, one of the things about the playoffs is certainly now it's some neutral site games, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, too. Your seniors knew it was the last time for them to play there in that stadium. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit before. Did you see any of that kind of remembrance or thought in their eye when this was all over?
Yeah, that's one thing that we mentioned to the guys in the week. It wasn't like a huge focus or anything like that, but it's our last time to play at Lee Snyder Field, and so that's an important game for those guys. And so we had a good week of preparation, and I felt like there was a great crowd Friday night. A lot of times those first playoff games, when you get into November, not as much fanfare maybe as some of the earlier games. But I think with Bixby and Union, there are a lot of people interested in that, even though there are a lot of big games around the Tulsa area on Friday night.
Right. And the Tulsa area will once again dominate 6A1, which we'll get into in a moment. First of all, I want to go to your defense. 6 tackles for loss. The Union offensive line, and of course, I see him every week, had been improving, but you found some way to get back there 6 different times, including 3 for one player alone. And I'm losing his name. Was it Sam Shepard? What was the young man who had 3 TFLs?
Wasn't Dawson Madden, was it?
I'll have to look it up in a second. But you had 6 TFLs. Tell me what you were doing so well defensively.
Well, our defensive line has been continuing to get better and play well, and it starts with those guys up front: Hector Garcia, Dawson Madden, and then Caden Penny and Connor Arent had a big game as well, a sophomore defensive lineman that we have. And so, Coach Jackson, our defensive line coach, has been rotating a lot of guys in there. A lot of those guys are playing really hard, and that sets things up for our linebackers when Coach Flowers decides to bring pressure.
Okay, I looked him up. Sorry, that's why I was kind of scrolling. Joe Peters, 3 TFLs. Tell me about that young man.
Yeah, Big Joe is playing nose guard. He's committed to play defensive line for Northeastern State University. Joe's getting a lot of snaps for us, and is just big. He's physical. He's hard to move, and he made the move. He played defensive end for us last year and gained a little bit of weight, got stronger, and so we moved him inside to nose guard, and he's really found a home in there and is doing good stuff.
And anytime you've got a nose guard with three TFLs, those dudes are usually double teamed. It is hard for them to get into the backfield. That's a really good night for a nose guard.
Yeah, it really is. And in an odd front like we play, those guys are drawing double teams all night
Yep.
long. And Joe does a really nice job of getting vertical push, splitting those double teams, and then was able to capitalize with those tackles for loss the other night.
Yeah, and McLaughlin with a couple of TFLs as well. And you can't overstate how important TFLs are. In our college broadcasts, we always have two keys for each of the three broadcasters in a game, and almost always first down or TFLs is in there. Explain why it is so doggone difficult on 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13, that kind of thing. Other than the normal, which means you've lost yardage, that changes play calling, doesn't it?
Well, it does. As a play caller, you want to stay on schedule, and we deem an efficient play as 4 yards or more on first down, picking up half the distance on second down, and then converting on third down. And so that's kind of how we deem an efficient play when we're putting it into huddle on our end. And so anytime there's a penalty or there's a tackle for a loss on first down, you have an inefficient play, and just to pick up half is a completely different ball game. So picking up half is going to be six instead of picking up 3 or 4. So
Right.
it's a big difference. It changes the perspective of the play caller, and so those tackles for loss force teams to do things maybe that they wouldn't typically do.
Absolutely. It is a big, big part of being a really good and efficient defense. We'll talk about Broken Arrow in a second and about the venues and all that kind of stuff too, which Coach can't do anything about, but still we're going to ask about it. In the meantime, I want to remind you we're brought to you by Red River Payroll. So if your business, especially this time of year, we're getting to that time where businesses, again, I know small business, right? You get to a time of the year where taxes and all that kind of stuff comes, and you're trying to get your payroll done, and it's nuts. And there's going to be some time and a half for all that kind of stuff. Let somebody else do it. Let Red River Payroll. And if you're already doing that, but you're tired of working with a firm where you don't really know anybody other than you're the client number, then Red River Payroll. Those folks it's a pride in knowing everybody. You'll know everybody from the top down. And even though they're not a massive firm, they have invested in the exact same kind of software that you'll find in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or anywhere else with giant firms just to take care of you. And that is who they are. They're a big supporter of Bixby football and Bixby athletics. So especially if you're out in Bixby and you've got a business, you should be using Red River Payroll. Ask them how they got the name. It's really funny and very simple. You'll be able to find them at redriverpayroll.com. Loren Montgomery here, the head football coach. I almost said basketball coach. I'm transitioning. Could you coach basketball? You think you could coach up a couple of hoopsters?
Absolutely not. I don't know the first thing. My kids have both played a little basketball growing up, and the only thing that I can do is cheer them on and coach effort.
Who George Allen was, the great football coach. I was interviewing Coach Allen once, and I asked him, I said, could a great coach coach any sport? And he gave me a 10-minute answer that was fabulous. At the time, he was at Long Beach State. It was late in his career. And he said, absolutely, I could coach hockey tomorrow. And he went into this long thing about being a coach. You learn the game, but it's being a motivator. It's being able to organize. It's having a program like you have at Bixby. He believes that coaching's in the blood, and that if you can do it, you can do it in any sport once you learn that sport, which I guess would probably be fair. But in the meantime, we won't ask you to coach any hoops. All right. Let's turn our attention to Broken Arrow. It's a team you haven't seen again. So once again, you get to prepare for somebody new. And it's a team that certainly has some stars that you know of, the Samaj Sanfords and the Jeremiah Satimbas and the Robersons and guys like that. When you see them, you see individual talent, but what else do you see?
Well, a team that's playing extremely hard. They're sound in their schemes and what they do. Coach Hill obviously has put together a good staff of guys that have been there and done that and know football. Defensively, it's hard to get them bent out of shape. They're pretty multiple from week to week, depending on whatever their game plan is. But the 4-2-5 or 4-3 defense that Coach Hill has run for a long time, and then adjust with a 3-3 stack, is just sound as can be. He knows what he likes. He knows what he likes to game plan against different things. And then, couple that with probably the best secondary that we've seen all year. They've got extremely talented guys all over that back end, and guys in their front seven that are big and physical and play hard. And, I think they're only giving up about 18 points a game. And offensively, they're big, they're physical. They've got a bunch of really good running backs.
Mhm.
and weapons out at wide receiver. So they're probably the most complete team we've seen, and they're playing at a really high level right now as they've grown up and continue to get better and continue to adapt to Coach Hill's coaching style.
Right. Yeah, they have certainly improved through the year. There's no doubt. And him being a defensive guy, you're right. You know, he knows what he's like. When you talk about that 3-3 stack, I saw it extensively, of course, it's also under Todd Graham. What kind of problems does it cause? I mean, take us back to being that offensive lineman like you were at one time, and you see these guys going all different directions.
Well, it's just different when you change from even to odd, and we're multiple in our defense, and so our guys are used to seeing both. But the 3-3 stack's a little bit different because I guess you could probably say shorten some of the angles that you
Yep.
get in a traditional 3-4 or 4-2 defense. The Mike linebacker is hard to account for, which means maybe you're not getting as much push on some of your doubles, and so. Yeah, it's a good scheme, and then the fact that they can so easily adjust between the two and between the two, even from play to play.
Yeah, and I was going to mention what you said first is the most important angles. It is so much harder to get those, and you've got to get them quick too, as an offensive lineman, to get to where you're supposed to be, or that dude's gone and you're getting yelled at, either in the huddle by the running back or the quarterback or by the guy over on the sideline. Yeah, I want to ask this, and you've had, and you certainly do. You still have great players that somebody has to kind of account for. I mean, it's an overall team, but they've got to account for guys. So my Stanford's a guy who has to be accounted for. When you've got a player of that caliber, he's at a safety position, so he's not playing a corner or something like that. Do you pay special attention? Do you look at certain things? Are there certain calls, or are you just going to make sure that you know where he is?
Of course, you have to know where he is. He's just such a dynamic player, and you don't just have to know where he is on defense. You have to know where he is on offense too,
Yep.
because they move him all around. He's clearly a super smart football player because they do so many things with him. But the thing that I notice is him being a safety and him being so talented and so fast. A lot of teams maybe that would have an explosive play that would result in a touchdown. It maybe is just an explosive play where they tackle you and make you snap it again. And so those talented guys in the back end, allow you. That ability and force you as an offense to continue to snap the ball and execute at a high level.
Sure. The other thing is you can't hang any balls. You're going to throw a deep ball. It better be on target and only to your guy. It hangs up there, a guy like that. And you've got guys like that too. They can get there, and that makes a real big difference. Overall, when you look at them, I mean, it's about Bixby. I know that it's about your team right now in the playoffs, but you do have to have some idea of the other guys. When you look at that group, what is it you think you need to do best?
Well, I mean, you got to be able to run the ball this time of year, and then you got to be able to know where number four is at all times, as we just talked about. And then you got to protect the football. And this time of year, it always comes down to a possession or a score or a mistake or those things. And so you got to play your best football, and you got to eliminate silly mistakes.
This one's going to be over at Catoosa. You're going to play. You've got the early game. Am I right? You got the 1 o'clock.
Correct.
Okay, so I've asked coaches this before. Does it matter to you that you're playing at 1 o'clock on a Friday? So it's going to be daylight.
Actually, we enjoy that. We've been fortunate enough over the years to play several day games, and our kids enjoy it. Our kids, have played at a really high level. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, but it's pretty close to the same time you're practicing each day. So there is familiarity in that, and so from my perspective, especially in a semifinal matchup, it's much more calming playing the early game as opposed to the
Yeah.
anxiety that you have waiting until 7 o'clock watching all those other games. And so we're fine, either way, we're excited to be playing, but our guys have always enjoyed those day games.
Yeah. Plus, you get a chance to hang around or come back and watch that 7 o'clock game. So that helps out a little bit too, rather than, I mean, you could go to that early game, but that would make it a little bit harder. All right. So let's go to schedule, because I want you to tell us about practicing on Thanksgiving and some of the things you have planned for the guys and the players and all that kind of stuff. Because, I mean, it's a big week, and it's a big week for the moms and the dads and all that. We know that. But it also changes your schedule playing early on that Friday. So talk to me a little bit about scheduling starting maybe on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, so our kids are out of school this entire week, and so I think last year was the first year we had that, and so I say they're out of school, but our kids that are concurrently enrolled in tech or TCC, still have classes in the morning. And so we're practicing midday, bring our kids in for weights and then meetings and then practice midday today and tomorrow. And then you mentioned Wednesday. We'll practice Wednesday morning, meet, lift, watch tape, everything like that. And then Thursday morning, we'll have our Thanksgiving morning practice. We invite our alumni to come out and watch. We'll have them introduce themselves after the practice. The moms will have some donuts and coffee for all the parents and alumni that are out. But no, it's a fun week and it's a fun time to get to practice and we'll have guys, alumni all the way from the 1960s to guys that just graduated last year. So it's a lot of fun.
That is really fantastic. And then on Friday morning, obviously changes a great deal. No school and that earlier game. What's your schedule Friday morning? What time are they getting there?
Yeah, so we'll get up. We'll get up to the facility around 8 o'clock and have some of our meetings and walk through, and then feed the guys, and then kind of get on our normal game time routine where we meet special teams, offensively, defensively, get taped, get on the bus, and roll.
All right, it's in Catoosa. There's a lot been said about the small stadium and that kind of thing. That's not, I mean, I know there's not a thing you can do about it. Does it matter to you where they play these games? I mean, the field's the field, right?
Of course not. It doesn't matter. We're excited to be playing. Someone was asking me before they announced where we might play or whatever, and I said I think we'd be excited to play in the Walmart parking lot if that's where they say we're going to play. So getting to stay on this side of the state's cool. I thought last year when we had the event at Claremore did a great job hosting. We're excited to play, and I think Catoosa has a great stadium. We're going to go over and take a look at that tomorrow.
And by the way, by the folks, when people say, and every coach says we play in a parking lot, he means it. And I know your guys mean it too. That's what I like about this. Well, Coach, congratulations. Another unbeaten year thus far. It's gone great. What a fun week. I'm so happy for your guys, your kids, and especially the alumni thing. That's really cool. So enjoy that, and we'll visit again next week. Have a great week, Coach.
Thanks, Rick.